I don't think it's nice you laughing. See, my mule don't like people laughing. It's the crazy idea you're laughing at him. Now, if you apologize like I know you're going to, I might convince him that you really didn't mean it.
This is Dueling Pistols, where history draws first and legends never die. No fluff, no filters, just raw stories of grit, blood, and legacy. Triggered by Black Flag. Once the trees were tapped and the sap wept into buckets, it takes 40 gallons of sap to boil down to 1 gallon of syrup. Ew. The product was unsurpassed sweetening to use in cooking, sell, or give to friends.
I ain't giving that to nobody. Are you kidding me? Do you know how much work that is? Oh, man, I have a hard enough time giving away, like, a jar of jam I've made. Let alone, like, This took me 6 months to make this pound of sugar. You want to lick?
Hey, friends, this episode is part of a 26-part run for our new podcast, Dueling Pistols. If you like it, be sure to subscribe to the new feed wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our new Dueling Pistols YouTube channel. Because once this 26-part Boone series is finished, we won't be posting any future Dueling Pistols episodes here. All right, folks, welcome to the show. I am your host, Brian Call, joined tonight by my brother, Brent Call. How are you, Brent?
Doing well, thank you.
All right, let's get right back into the book. We're basically moving ahead with Boone, a biography written by Robert Morgan. And the last episode, we learned about how whether you're in the 1700s or the 2000s, kids sneak out of the house and steal their parents' vehicles. Because Daniel Boone stole his dad's horse with his friend Henry. And they snuck off to... Well, what is he? It didn't have permission.
Well, he kind of killed it. I mean, like, you're kind of like, okay. He stole it.
Well, it's like he crashed the parents' car and totaled it. It's the same thing. He jumped the horse over the cow. It broke its neck. And then they snuck the saddle and the bridle back into the barn to hide, the evidence of their wrongdoing.
Daniel Boone got away with murder.
Very true. So we're learning a little bit about Daniel Boone in the early days. We did a little. We set the stage for the history of the time. The last episode we covered the Revolutionary War, America's independence. We covered the discovery of the United States by Columbus and different dates that kind of set the stage for where we're at right now. We remember how George Washington was what in relation to Daniel Boone, 2 years older than Daniel Boone. So George Washington, the first president of the United States, basically was born about the same time, almost exactly, as Daniel Boone. So picture, if you're trying to figure out where Daniel Boone fits in history, he was here before there was a president of the United States. So let's get into the book here, and we're going to jump right into this section we talked about in the Old World, which they refer to England as the Old World, and this is the New World in the United States, right? And this is how it's often referred to in history, but back then they also referred to it that way. So the Old World, where they all came from, over the seas, fur was reserved for royalty, but in the United States, in North American forests, fur was there for anyone with the skill to take it. And you can imagine, as we're sitting here in the studio in some luxurious bear furs, that we're both like relaxing in and lounging in on these chairs.
They're hot.
They're warm.
They are warm.
Imagine how comfortable and nice it would be to have one of these in in some cold weather conditions.
I don't have to think too far. Right? It's freezing outside.
And so we're going to get back into the book here. I'm going to resume where we left off. It says in the book, the hide of the deer was used mostly for clothing. Scraped, tanned, softened, and smooth, buckskin was common as khaki is now. Deer hides were such a familiar item of frontier trade that the Spanish dollar, worth about one hide, came to be called a buck.
I did know this. I only know that I have no idea why I know that, but I do know that.
We discussed this before, like in the summer. I was telling you that fact. A buck, that's where the name came from. Every hide from a deer was about a buck. You should say it the other way around. A deer is a buck. You call it, a male deer is a buck. And so they nicknamed $1 a buck instead because, and you can think of that like, I'll give you $5.
Mm-hmm.
It's 5 deer hides.
Yeah.
For exchange of whatever, because you're not actually giving them dollars because you don't have dollars. You don't have money to trade. You have goods to trade. Some people have dollars, but many don't. Back in this time, definitely it was trade driven. So you say, I got $2 for that wagon wheel or whatever. And, so it sounds like deer hides were a major product. And the buck skin served as many purposes on the frontier, used for clothing, strings, and pouches. Prepared right, it was soft and pliable. However, when wet, buckskin tended to become very heavy, and it shrank as it dried out. Any kind of thin leather does the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The American long rifle, developed by German gunsmiths in Pennsylvania, was the weapon of choice for hunters of both races. It was light and sturdy and could be accurate at up to 200 yards in the hands of a skilled marksman. Both white and Indian hunters used the firearms as well. British muskets used other firearms as well. British muskets, Dutch shotguns, and pistols. A man's rifle was his most important companion in the forest. The saying was he should select a rifle as carefully as a wife. So what does the American long rifle look like?
It's long, Brian.
Is it? How long is it? German gunsmiths in Pennsylvania. So it wasn't created in Germany. Your crafty Germans in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. So the American long rifle, also known as the Kentucky long rifle or the Pennsylvania long rifle, basically, you had German Quakers that came over here, and they're good at making things. That German engineering, dude, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
They make things. Scarily good.
Mm-hmm.
A little too good sometimes.
Yeah.
So it looks like the barrel on these things were about 48 inches.
Wow. That's a long barrel, dude.
Mm-hmm. The overall gun was about 70 to 74 inches.
So it's 4 feet long. Wow.
Yeah, these things are as tall as them. As some of these people. Like they're ridiculously long. And not only that, but like the butt on these guns.
How accurate were they? Out to how far? Because we're talking 1730s right now.
So they estimate about 73,000 of these things have been built.
Wow.
Yeah, you got to think about that. Those were like by hand for the most part.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Not that many people were here at the time.
7 to 10 round, or what am I just reading? 7 to 10 pounds.
10-pound rifle.
Yeah.
We make those today, too.
Usually 2+ rounds per minute, dependent upon the user.
So every 30 seconds, you could fire a shot.
100 yards is pretty easy for these things. 200 yards for an experienced user.
Wow.
A little bit of rifling, man, goes a long way.
Okay. So it says, as they interacted more and more with the whites, Indians changed their customs and dress. With the traditional buckskin leggings and breechclout, the Indians often wore the long linen hunting shirts donned by the white woodsmen. The log cabin and stockade were almost impossible to build without metal tools. For centuries, the Indians had lived in shelters made of poles and bark hides and brush. But once the Indians had metal axes and saws, adzes and augers, they too made log dwellings, similar to those the whites built. It is said the Indians preferred to notch their logs on the underside, while whites notched theirs on top.
What a weird thing to get persnickety about.
It's interesting, though. We kind of take that for granted. You're like, well, we have early settlers are building log cabins and all this kind of stuff. And you're thinking, man, those primitive Indians, why didn't they build log cabins and so on and build sturdier structures or whatnot? For some, it was because their lifestyle was a mobile one. They traveled, they got places, they did things, they went around. But for others that were more sedentary, I mean, one of the big reasons was technology. They didn't have those saws. They didn't have metal. Think about that. Mm-hmm. They didn't have, the way to notch out the wood, cut things out, hatchets, that kind of stuff. When you're making a hatchet out of obsidian or a rock or a stone, you're not necessarily going to build a whole log cabin too easily.
No, those things aren't exactly sturdy.
Yeah, or sharp. They're sharp, but not
Fragile.
durable. Yeah, fragile. You're not chopping wood with obsidian, really. It says that it has long been observed that white and Indian communities on the frontier mirrored each other in many ways. From the Indians, the whites learned herbal medicines, hunting techniques, crops fitted to the local climate and soil, preparation of hides and furs, geography of the regions farther west. From the whites, the Indians acquired firearms, metal tools, whiskey, cloth, small grains, and a number of diseases that killed more natives than all the wars combined.
Jeez.
We just got through a little pandemic here.
I don't know if you guys heard about it.
It seemed to affect old people quite a bit, and then just random people could get sick. Some people you didn't expect to die from it did, and others, it was like nothing happened. I imagine that it's that times 1,000, the way that European diseases, foreign diseases, period, from all the way from China to Europe, Germany, England, all those people who immigrated to the United States, they brought with them all these little diseases, and the existing population just did not have any immunity to that kind of stuff. And I imagine they just died.
Tore through them like a wet paper towel.
And they didn't know either. Like, we didn't know germs. We didn't know a lot about what the problems were, what the causes were. I'm sure the native people knew that it came from these people, but those that survive, they carry the antibodies, and then when they go to have children, they pass those antibodies on to the new children and so forth, and then you have a population that is resilient to these strains and these diseases, these viruses. But it's going to wipe out a lot of folks before that happens, and that's the story really of the Americas. The number of Indians that were here, the estimated numbers, and then how the diseases killed them. That's an astonishing number. It seems like modern historians want to ignore that, by the way. They want to pretend like settlers just came over here and murdered all the Indians. Things were far more nuanced than that. And those diseases that they brought over had far more impact than anything else. And it's not just, anytime white people pushed into the interior, they brought with them so many of these things, which then killed 9 out of 10 Indians. To me, it wasn't like it's just life. Like, it wasn't like, just by their existing here, they brought it with them. They didn't really have much choice, to leave it behind when you carry those illnesses. It's just how it is. It's part of the world changing. So it was in this world of mingling Indian and European cultures that Daniel Boone's character and aspirations were formed. He became an expert marksman, tracker, and trapper. He never forgot a trail or a place he'd seen. But at the same time, he was part of a large, close family, loyal and affectionate, good-natured, and often funny. I've hunted with quite a few guys. I can't say that I'm the best at being in a place and then imprinting it on my head and never forgetting where I am.
I got lost in a parking lot this morning. Like, that's like, when he said that, I was like, okay, Robert. Yeah, he never forgot a leaf or a tree.
There are people who are gifted like that. I remember when I was a kid, my cousin Ben was he was uncanny how he could walk through some place and then walk right back the way he had come. And I'm like, how do you do that without a map, a compass, a GPS? Like, how does this work for you?
You have a non-ADHD brain, and you have the ability to concentrate and look at things.
He didn't even try. It just was common sense, I had to work on that skill. It never just was there. Thankfully, though, I have other skills, and I think that's something that I had to hone. Throughout the years, I got very good with maps. I got good at committing to memory the places I was at. I got good at understanding terrain and lodging in my mind. You can think about it this way: in the modern era, there are people who put into their smartphone, let's say, where they're going. Okay. And they drive to where they're going. Let's say it's an hour away or half hour away into the city. As they're driving, the device just says, turn left, turn right, turn left, go this way, stop at this place, turn right, and so on until you're there. And people just follow their phone mindlessly. They don't pay attention. The person who just follows it gets there and comes back. And if you said, well, how'd you get there? They're like, I don't know. I just followed what it said to do. Mm-hmm. Then there are those, and I work on this now, that drive. And it's like, okay, you're remembering how you're getting to where you're going as you're going. You're like, okay, it's a left right here at this Walmart here, and then you're going to go up this road. Okay, I get it. And so you're following the instructions, but you're also committing to memory the path you're taking. Mm-hmm. It's two things happening simultaneously. If you want to be good at being in the woods, you want to be good at navigating, you got to hone that skill of logging, not just paying attention to where you're going, but logging how you're getting there. So you can go back and recreate those steps in your mind as you return. And that's a skill that some people are naturally good at, but it's definitely a skill that can be honed and developed too. You know, learning about handrails and fall points. Like if I go this far, I know I've gone too far. If I follow this river like a handrail, it's like, oh, I know that I'm in the right spot. If I can see the river, you know, or whatever you're using to navigate. You can use a peak here and a peak there, and I'm about halfway in between each peak. And it's really hard when you're in Oregon in a dense forest on the Oregon coast. A lot of things start to look the same. And growing up there, I didn't grow up. I started to learn when I hunted places like Colorado, where it was wide open. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I never got lost. You know, I never got lost. And I think it's kind of funny. I do run into people that are like, I never get lost. I'm like, well, where you're hunting, I would never get lost too. You know, try hunting in a canopy of forest that everything looks the same. You see 10 feet each direction.
It could be anything in 10 feet.
Right? It's like, that's a different animal. It's easy to get turned around and spooky. Upside down, especially when you're chasing elk or something in the woods. And then the next thing you know, you stop and it's like, where am I? Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm talking about. It's not hard for me. Like I can go in my backyard here and go anywhere I want and I will never get lost.
Never.
And so terrain matters. You know, the micro terrain matters, in regards to that. So, you know, where Daniel Boone is, it's forested. It's like he can remember the micro topography, the little turn, the tree, the creek bed, the dirt pile, like that kind of stuff, piece by piece by piece, without a mountain, you know, when it's relatively flat and forested. That's impressive, man. I also think that, the pressure of time isn't there in their mind. In his mind, as Daniel goes out, he's like, there's no, I need to be back in 2 days. It's, I'll wander around. I'll figure out where I'm at. I mean, I'll be back in a month, you know, or 2 weeks.
It's nonchalant.
It just doesn't matter. He'll figure it out. There's no, and he has the woodsman skills to just live if he needs to live. So we're going to learn about that a little more as we go on, but that's the setting for Daniel Boone. It says he loved to enjoy himself and be with friends before vanishing into the woods again, emerging days later with bear meat, a deer, pelts to trade. These two sides to his character seem to be present from the first. From childhood, he seemed to inhabit a middle ground between white and Indian cultures, and he served at times as a kind of double agent. His loyalties complex and divided between his several worlds and kinships. So I had mentioned before how much he appreciated the native people, how much he loved that culture, how much he identified with living the way that native people live in the mountains, in the woods, alone for long periods of time, communing with nature, all that kind of stuff. But he also fit in well within civilization too. He was at home there. He did well. He was liked. He could tell stories. He was kind of a leadership figure, a leader in the community, admired, looked up to, brave, courageous. But he ends up caring about human beings for the individuals that they are. He's not tribalistic in any way. He's very much like he looks at a native person as an individual. He looks at a white person as an individual.
Of their character.
Imagine that.
Weird.
So he judges people by character, basically. And what's remarkable is how much respect the native people develop for him as well. Mm-hmm. That speaks to me. That speaks to the character of him as a human being. That the culture out there could respect and admire this man, even though he's not born and raised the way that they were, but probably closer to what they were than we think of in our mind. as these two cultures intermingled a lot more cordially than what history
like we were
would
talking
have
about the
us
other day,
think.
Last of the Mohicans, they were playing stickball and stuff in the
Yeah.
town square, and like that was the average.
Yeah.
They did intermingle, they did hang out, they did commerce.
Totally. So I'm going to, there's a little section right here. You read that, Brent?
People of the forest.
This section, People of the Forest, I'm going to this sets a little bit of tone for the landscape we're dealing with, the time frame and all that kind of stuff. It's just a 2-page little piece that's kind of stuck in the middle of the book right here in this chapter. I'm going to read this so that you have even better understanding of what's going on at this time. Along 10,000 slopes, sap rose in maples and arbutus bloomed in late February and shad bushes in March and April. On stream banks, buffalo grazed along with elk and deer. Bears slept through the winter in their dens, bowels sealed with a fecal plug, then crawled out in late winter, awakened by thunder to eat laurel leaves, which opened them again. And foxes barked in the hills. Beavers, muskrats, mink, and otters busied themselves along creeks, their fur luxuriant. Blending into the wilderness, Indians lived in villages of bark and logs, skins on poles, brush and thatch. They caught fish in wicker traps, killed game with bows and arrows, fought wars with spears and stone hatchets, prayed to the mountains and the spirits of bears and stars. Their lives were complex and evolving. By the early 1700s, Indians in eastern North America had been dealing with English-speaking settlers for about a century, 100 years. So 1600, remember we had said the discovery of America was 1500, roughly 1492 by Columbus. Then later you had, we're talking by the early 1700s, which is the time frame that Daniel Boone is showing up, 1724, I think was when he was born. That means that, like it says here, Indians have been dealing with English-speaking settlers for about 100 years now. Isn't that long, but pretty long.
It's long enough. They've got people talking.
Yeah. Welcoming the invaders at first, the Indians shared their knowledge. What the Europeans saw as virgin land was often widowed land Indians had abandoned. Because Indians tended to move where hunting was most rewarding, they did not seem to, quote-unquote, own land or, quote-unquote, improve land in the ways that the whites recognized. Nor did they raise livestock. Colonists were surprised that Indians showed so little interest in accumulating wealth. The two cultures generally misunderstood each other. Europeans often assumed Indians had no religion because they saw no recognizable rituals or symbols of worship. The Indians had no word for animal or beast as distinct from human. To them, all living things had spirits or souls. Not only did the animals have spirits, but the guardian spirits of people usually appeared as animals. Owning land in the white way made no more sense than owning a tract of air or sunlight. Indians were rich by desiring little, William Cronin writes.
Could you imagine someone coming up and being like, "You're breathing my air. Pay up, buddy."
Well, it was definitely foreign. You can see how these two cultures were talking past each other. They didn't get it. And you had a language barrier, of course. Also, when I read Land of the Spotted Eagle with Luther Standing Bear, he's a Lakota chief, and it's an excellent book. I did some podcasts on it in the past. One of the things that he said in that book was that the less a man owned, the more he was admired in the tribe. That it showed strength, that you gave away everything that you had and you lived on almost nothing. That's the exact opposite. I mean, if you can think of it, if you live off the land and you're a warrior and a woodsman, what better way to show strength that you're strong is that you don't really need a whole arsenal of weapons. You don't need a big fortified house. You don't need a ton of horses, right? You got like your horse, your gun or your bow, and everything you need you just get through skill, talent, and ability.
It's like those guys, they drop them off with a big fat knife in the woods and come back 2 weeks later, they have like a hut and they built a pool and stuff. You're like,
it's self-sufficient, self-reliant, but it also, I think, pushes a man to realize that when you're not inundated with material things, you look at the world in a different way. Mm-hmm. Not too long ago, I heard Elon Musk on a Joe Rogan podcast.
He's talking about downsizing his house.
And he's like, I'm getting rid of everything. I'm selling kind of all the stuff I have. And Rogan's like, well, why? Why are you selling the house? Why are you buying? Why do you have fewer cars? Why didn't he's like, when you have nothing, there's nothing they can take from you.
What did he call it? There are fewer points of leverage that they can leverage against you. There's less things for them to leverage against you, the less things you have.
You're sort of judgment proof.
Yeah.
Like taken away. Okay.
Okay.
I don't
take away my mobile home. Shucks.
Yeah.
You know,
when you don't have a lot, when you don't hoard a lot of material things, there is an independence that comes with that. I think you look at the world in a different way. It's very easy then also to not get caught up or to pay attention, I guess, to what matters most, which is your integrity, your character, the service you give to others. Like the things that are the most fulfilling are the things that are not material in nature. They're the relationships. They're the way that you improve the world around you. So the Indians have that mindset. We don't need to own a whole bunch of stuff. The fewer material possessions we have, that's good. Where on the other end, the more traditional society of the settlers was own property, own land, own livestock, control everything, have a place where you can plant crops and so forth. Now, don't get me wrong. That's the advent of technology that brings on all the luxuries that we have today in modern civilization. I like my car. I like an airplane ride when I want to go to Alaska. And then I like to, get into the mountains and have an adventure for 2 or 3 weeks, bring back a moose. And that's not happening 100 years ago or 200 years ago. There's certain things we get to see and do and experience because of technology today. Mm-hmm. We also don't die.
I'd be dead for sure without technology 10 times over easily.
You almost died already. Brent got leukemia.
I came out of the womb unlucky.
So there's lots of technology is great, but it's also juxtaposed. I mean, it's also a curse. Mm-hmm. And appreciating it, but also recognizing it for the downsides. I think that's a healthy way to look at things.
I definitely think it's a two-edged sword if you don't pay attention to the fact that it's got two blades when you're swinging it.
Yeah.
You get nicked.
Probably the greatest initial difference between Indian and white, going back to the book, white land use, was the keeping of livestock. The English plowed their fields, and plowing changed the ecology. In a few short years, the landscape looked drastically different. The settlers' ranging livestock destroyed crops and drove away the game. White settlers meant to stay in one place exhausted the land by growing mostly corn. The English introduced many pests, including rats and dandelions, and diseases they brought helped thin out the native populations.
That's always a good idea.
I'll
bring along an animal to help me do this.
They brought rats, Brent.
Gosh dang, could you imagine Brian America without rats?
So is that true? There were no rats before?
See, that I don't know.
Is that true? Like rats are an invasive species? Because we don't act like rats are invasive. We act like rats have been here. Don't we?
You know why? It's because they came from the Europeans.
You figured that one out. I'll keep reading. It says in 1709, an English colonist reckoned that the Carolinas, 6 out of 7 Indians, 6 out of 7, Brent, that's greater than 90%, died of disease in the previous 50 years. Hold on. Say that again. Hold on. 6 out of 7 Indians
died
of disease in the previous 50 years.
And this is before...
This is in 1709.
Dang.
So that means between 1660 and 1709, 6 out of 7 Indians died.
Oh, they are an invasive species, bro.
Are they? Rats
Almost all rats are invasive. Guess where they came from. Guess where they came from. Same place the chicken did.
The rats came from England.
But before that, where did they come from?
Asia. Everything comes from Asia.
Everything comes from Asia. Everything comes from Asia.
Everything that just reproduces
comes
from Asia.
So it looks like Norway went up and jacked a bunch of Asia up and then came back and they brought with them the brown rat.
Okay, 6 divided by 7, Brent, that's 86% of the Indian population was dead by 1710.
They think it was the Hessian troops, which were the Germans, correct?
The Hessian, who knows? I don't know. Is it? Is that a German word?
German soldiers. Go, Brent. Nailed it. I read books too, guys.
Okay. Okay. So think about that. They bring over, they change they change the place.
Mm-hmm. They brought with them rifles and rats.
Yeah. They changed the whole world and metal tools. And so this is like if you're a native person at this time, it's both a blessing and a curse, right? You're getting all this new technology. Life is changing. You're seeing it right before your eyes, but also the old world is dying. What you grew up with before,
and you're watching it unfold so fast.
Here's the thing that is interesting. Like this 1709 English colonist said, in the Carolinas, 6 out of 7 Indians died of disease in the previous 50 years. That means, so the way that I have heard this explained is the native people didn't even know, like the diseases wiped them all out before they even saw a white person.
Oh, wow. So, like, the diseases came. They didn't even see white people.
Yeah, they just spread. Like for example, when
you have some trading caravan.
Our last pandemic, when that stuff came in, like, you didn't see where it came from. It just transferred from human to human to human. Like, in no time at all, the entire nation was infected, right? Because it's so contagious. So that's what you're talking about back then. You know, people on the East get it. But then they infect smallpox all the way to the West Coast, from Indian population to Indian, as they intermingle the whole nation. So they all just died and they didn't know why. That's the estimate. There's an estimate that by the time settlers were sort of setting the stage in the East anyway and moving in, the remaining Indians were already resilient against disease that were still there. And that's why as people move out west for the first time, that's why the Lakota, for example, they get blankets from the Americans, from the settlers and so forth, and they experience this same loss in life because the diseases hadn't spread there yet. There were still land barriers and distances between people that kept some of those diseases from really reaching those distances. And so what happens in the East pretty much happens a second time 100 or 200 years later in the West, because all of this is happening in the early 1700s in Pennsylvania and on that eastern shore. And then as they come through the Cumberland Gap and they go into Kentucky and then they go into Kansas and the middle of Colorado and they move their way west into California and all that. All those things happen 100 to 200 years after this first. So 1700s right now. Well, the last of the Lakota Indian Wars is the late 1880s or something like that. Jeez. So you're talking nearly 200, 150 to 200 years later, you're seeing the same thing sort of happen on the West Side. That's why figures like the mountain men we read about, like Jeremiah Johnson in that other book, Crow Killer, that we read on the other show, that story with Jeremiah Johnson, it perfectly describes these men wanting and desiring to see new places. They keep pushing west because as civilization comes in and the animals disappear, they move west again so they can keep hunting, keep trapping, keep living like native people. But their very presence and the way they live on the land sort of invites and guarantees that way of life will be gone in the future, especially since so much of it was commercialized, where native people didn't live that way. Food for thought, right? So it says, back to the book, the English passion for accumulating wealth struck the Indians as insanity. For this and other reasons, Indian holy men began to describe whites as created for a different purpose. Both Indians and whites suspected each other of witchcraft. Indians were thought to worship the devil, and Indians in turn were convinced the English were in league with evil spirits. All too soon, the Indians concluded the invaders were stupid and laughed. But whites who got to know Indians found them more honest and tolerant than most members of their own race. It was said by some that Indians were more Christian than the English, showing greater charity toward the land and its inhabitants. As the Indians were pushed back from their traditional lands, prophets rose among them, urging the nations to resist the white encroachments and teaching a militant pan-Indianism. Indian nations were divided between those who sought accommodation with whites and those who preached nativism and urged a return to ancient beliefs and rituals. One difficulty of organizing Indian resistance was the chiefs were not rulers in the European sense. Decisions were made by consensus, and often there was a war chief, a peace chief, and a woman who served as a leader of the women. And yet the story of the meeting of whites and Indians was not always one of misunderstanding and tragedy. In the French-claimed lands of the Middle Ground, as the Ohio and Illinois country was called, whites and Indians lived in close proximity throughout much of the 18th century, learning from each other, trading, and intermarrying. But the Americans who moved into the Middle Ground had other ambitions, other visions. Check out this drawing right here. It shows... can you say that word? Timucua, Indian hunters observed in Florida. This is what this drawing is, wearing deer costumes. So these dudes with bows are in those deer costumes.
Okay,
and then those are real deer over there.
What? Do you think that works?
Camouflage?
Think that works?
I assume so. I mean, it says this was an engraving from 1590. So about 90 years after Columbus discovered, 100 years after Columbus discovered America, based on a painting by Jacques Lemoyne. I'm not French, so...
It's all right, they can't spell with a darn.
The classic images by the Flemish engraver De Bry, he lived between 1528 and 98, of Indians in Virginia, Florida, and South America. They were made from rough sketches. So this was a sketch from 1530, which then he made into an engraving. But you can see them.
Okay, yeah, totally. Yeah, the extra legs and stuff.
They've got the horns, the heads, and I bet you these don't look like deer at all. They look like old world deer drawings, more like stag than like a whitetail. They don't look anything like a whitetail. Mm-mm. When they draw deer, they're drawing stags, red deer. They're not drawing elk, and they're not drawing the antlers of whitetail or anything like that.
But that's just because they're European. That's what they're used to, right?
Yeah, that's what I don't even think this person was in
America.
I think they were just drawing what they had heard about in America. It's an interesting drawing. This is Cornstalk, chief of the Shawnees in the Scioto Valley of Ohio. Artist is unknown. It's an engraving, American Legion magazine, February 1975. Cornstalk was the outstanding political leader and diplomat of the Ohio Shawnees during the period of Lord Dunmore's War in 1774, which Boone was involved with.
What was his name? Cornstalk?
Cornstalk. Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a cool name. Like, I kind of dig it. It's not Cornstalker.
Right.
It's just Cornstalk.
Yeah. What do you think so far? We're laying this foundation. What do you think so far? We haven't really got into, all the events that occur now, the historical things that Daniel Boone accomplishes, but you kind of have to take some time to lay a foundation so people understand context.
Yeah, because when you say 1700s, in my mind, so 1900s, they all kind of run to each other up until like 1920.
Yeah.
To the roaring 20s and 1700s, like, I know in my mind.
They're different.
They're vastly different. There's industrial age, there's all sorts of stuff. You got guys talking like this. And like, but at the same time, like, unless you put some thought into it, like I don't line them up correctly.
Yeah. Well, what's fascinating is to know also that there's pockets of America that where you got like Newsies and you've got like
pockets of Quakers,
New York, and then you got pockets of trappers fighting the Indians, and you got General Custer over here. So you have worlds colliding, man. You have cities and industrial ages and all that, and then you have Indian wars. It's like you have just these things happening. It's a very interesting set of events, and so depending on where you are, you think Wyatt Earp as well, and
Billy Blue Bonnet.
Yeah, American history is wild, but anyway, that's it for today. We'll get into the next part here. It just, the story starts moving along a little faster. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Hello, friends. I hope you're enjoying our new Dueling Pistols podcast. Remember, it's only here temporarily on the Gritty channel.
Short time.
If you want to subscribe to the main show, head on over to our YouTube channel, Dueling Pistols, and subscribe over there. And anywhere that you get your podcast, you can subscribe there. Thanks for supporting us.
We're on all platforms.
Yeah, we're out there. Find it over there. And tell a friend.
Yeah.
Tell a friend about our new show.
Tell all your friends.
Help us grow it
bigger. We're just going to turn this to an ASMR.
All right. Thanks, guys. Catch you on the next episode.